Well, hello there. It's Yvonne from Women's Fitness Adventures. Thank you for joining me. I have a great conversation this evening. It is talking about our feet, not necessarily about our shoes, but our feet or what we put on our feet. And your feet can make or break your hike. And I'm going to share with you some tips that experienced hikers have shared with me and that I've seen teaching, training, and taking women on the trail for over 12 years all around the world. And it's particularly relevant. I went to a ball on the weekend and I wore some high heels, and I don't often wear high heels, and they didn't give me blisters on my heels. But of course, you're on a bit of a different angle to when you're in boots, and there's a couple of, little red spots on my toes. So not only can our hiking boots or our feet make or break our hike, but all other shoes that we put on around the time that we're going away on a hike as well can really make a difference. So welcome if you are joining me live. I'd love to have you let me know where you are. Hello, Heather, and who you are. And if you have any questions or any points that you wish to raise or wish to share your lived experience, please go ahead and do so. So, we talk a lot about gear and equipment, and, shoes are part of that. But one thing we cannot change is our feet. They are connected to us. So we need to look after and care for our feet as part of our, I guess, equipment for the trail. And this is not a podiatry lesson. This is not anything to do with, blisters or anything like that. This is talking about how looking after our feet will make or break our hike. So the more we can do that, the better. So I have been watching women on multi-day adventure hikes for a long time now, and sometimes it's not about fitness that determines the success of the hike. Sometimes it is about what we are doing with our feet, what are we wearing on our feet, and how that makes us feel, and how we then move on the trail. And the shoe conversation that we have when we go to an outdoor store is probably not long enough and not in depth enough with the salesperson at the store that is trying to help us. And not only is when you buy your shoes a really big decision in terms of, a good pair of hiking shoes or boots will cost you money. But if you average out that cost per kilometer or cost over time, it's not a whole lot. But if you think about what that investment in your shoe or hiking boot is, you're not only investing in buying that physical piece of equipment, but you're investing in making sure that your hike that you're going to do is a future success, and that all the training that you're going to do in the lead up to that is a success as well. Plus all the time that you put into it. So not only is it, just the process of looking after your feet, but it's all that other investment, that tangible and non-tangible, that goes into getting yourself on a multi-day hike or on the hiking trail. That investment and that initial time spent at the store helps determine whether that's a success. So it goes way back to some decisions you make from a long time ago. So hello, Meg. Hello, Ellen. Hello, Karen. Hello, Christine. Hello, Alison and Leonie and Elizabeth. Thank you for joining me live. So, we decide that we either need to replace our shoes or boots, or we're getting into hiking for the first time, or our foot has changed and we're going to change brands. And we probably, if we don't have a whole lot of experience in the hiking space, we'll go into a store and say, look, especially first timers, I see this with a lot of, women especially, but men as well, who come new to hiking and want to make sure that they're getting themselves set up properly in the first place. And feet is a really important one. But we'll go into a store and the store will ask questions, and not for very long, and get you fitted with a pair of shoes, and pretty much within 20 or 30 minutes you're off out the door. And it might work for all other types of shoes from when we were kids, for school shoes, if we are, using them for walking around our footpath and stuff like that. But hiking boots, when you are out on a trail and you're more remote, you can't just go, hey, I'm taking these pair of shoes off and I'm going to put on another pair, because not only are you having to carry them, but you could have the option where your feet are so sore that you just can't get back from where you are. So, it does require a lot more consideration as to what you put on your feet and how you choose what you put on your feet, and that process that goes around it. So, a lot of my observations for people getting into hiking for the first time or when we're looking to replace our hiking shoes is, are they on sale? Are they available? A lot of stores in Australia will only get one or two shipments a year. And if your size sells out and you really need a pair, what do you do? Do you switch to another brand? Do you stick with the same brand? How do you know they're going to work? What terrain are you going to walk on? How frequently are you going to do them? Um, and, you know, i- in the store, if it's not a store that you know, like and trust, or you don't have a checklist, fortunately for our members who are watching, we have a checklist, is, you know, you don't know what you don't know. So you go and buy a pair of boots and, for most women, it's like, oh, the boots are ugly, that nothing fits my feet. I've got to go wide foot. Uh, I don't like the color. They feel uncomfortable. They feel hot, all of those things. So we start to make tiny compromises along the way until we know better. So choosing the right shoe or boot really sets you up for so many things because you don't want blisters, you don't want hot spots. And how our feet feel and perform on a trail is very different to how they perform on the footpath or walking around in our normal environment. So when we walk on a trail, our shoes or our boots do so many things. The tread that we have on our shoes is designed for gripping, or our boots is designed for gripping. Our sand shoes that we wear around or sports shoes that we wear around the suburbs is not designed for that. So automatically you've got a different feel coming up through your foot, which may or may not be a new experience. Your boot, if you wear them, might have, grip around your ankle, and that is a new experience as well. Some women really like that, and some women don't. The boots are also inflexible. They have to, they're not great for walking on footpath, but in a creek or on a trail, they kind of bend and flex and move all around rocks. And then the longer we're on a trail, the more pressure we've got going through the shoe. And so, you can feel a difference in your feet, the soles of your feet, if you're out on a trail for 2 hours as opposed to maybe 6 or 8 hours. So most of the time when we go and buy a pair of shoes and they feel great in the store and we might have taken hopefully our orthotics in with us, um, is that we would walk around the home because they'll let you generally take them back to the store if they're not, outside evident damaged. Um, and we've really walked maybe half an hour. And then it's not until we get on a trail, 2 hours later, and a trail that's 2 hours long, that we start to really feel whether the shoes or boots are going to work for us. Then you go away on a multi-day hike and, you're 5 days in a row for, 5, 6 hours at a time. And that's when you really know if those shoes or boots are going to work for you. So the footwear decision is probably the biggest decision you can make. Your feet decision are the biggest piece of equipment. So you put the two together and we really need to pay attention to those little things on the end of our legs. So when I am out on the trail, and as I have said in a couple of sessions before, that my job is to watch how women walk, and I can tell if shoes are too small, if shoes are too tight, if shoes aren't grippy enough, if they're worn, if someone's getting a blister, if one foot is favoring because the shoe on that side feels a lot better, if feet are swollen. I can tell straight away. I can tell by the look on someone's face if their feet are hurting them, and or they're reluctant to go downhill when they haven't been before because the grip on their shoes is starting to wear. So I can tell all these things, and feet would be, happy feet, happy hike is, a really good motto to go by. And you can spend lots of money on lots of things for hiking. Everyone wants you to spend money with them. But if you can get your footwear right, if you can look after your feet that go into that footwear, then it does make a huge difference. So what we have learned, the experienced hikers, the women that I talk to in my community, is that not only do we look after our shoes and monitor, and we were talking about that today at hiking, um, you know, having that in that mind, that backup pair of shoes, that if your brand were to suddenly disappear, what would the next one be and how would you wear them in? But look, foot management and boot management or shoe management is an ongoing active thing. It's not a passive thing. So if we are constantly getting foot pain, what are we actually doing that's causing that foot pain? Is it something that's spilled over from our regular life as opposed to our hiking life? Is it something that happens to midlife women, when hormones start to change and things start to happen with our feet? Is that part of it and we haven't changed our hiking footwear to suit that? Is it that, as depending on the climate you live in, your arches start to drop and your feet get a bit flatter and then the size goes up? So staying with the same size all the time isn't always the answer. Or perhaps it's that you went into the store and you tried your shoes on when your feet weren't swollen from a day's hiking. So feet will swell. So, automatically you're probably half a size down. But it's also what we do with our feet afterwards, staying in sweaty, hot, wet socks after a hike can, the sweat that's in our feet anyway, regardless of whether we're hiking, can cause, water or moisture to get under the toenails, which can also cause, some blackening of the toenails. So knowing that your foot, the sock, and the shoe all work in this nice little, threesome together really can keep you an active foot person. And I say active foot because do you talk to your feet kindly? Do you gently massage them? Do you trim your toenails regularly and not just the day before the hike so that there's lots of space there? Do you monitor for blisters? Do you know what causes you blisters? Do you suddenly get blisters when you've never had them before? Um, and what we do know is that the same shoe that we had 3 years ago, or however long we replace them, isn't the same shoe that we need for today. Our feet will change. So, always get a refit. So when we think about shoes, we think about our feet. I often see this on Facebook. What brand? And if you want to drop your brand in there, that's a great thing. If you want to share your foot story, happy to do that as well. Drop it in below. But we often get asked, what brand of shoes should I buy? How much should I buy, spend on shoes? Should I get them waterproof or not? But really, it's the fit of your shoe that comes before everything else. Same with your backpack. It's the fit of your backpack that comes before anything else. So the fit of your shoe comes before everything. It means that you might have to go into a store and try on however many pairs that they have. It means that you might have to take your other 2 pairs of shoes that you wear regularly, whether that's sandals or flats or sports shoes, and take them into the store so they can see whether you're rolling in or rolling out with your feet. It might mean that you need to take orthotics in. It might mean if you're replacing a pair of boots that you need to take the old ones in so they can see just exactly how you wear them, that they can see whether you like a low rise or a high rise or not a boot at all or a shoe. Or it might mean that you were in a boot and now you need to move back to a shoe. In the store, wear the socks, go in the afternoon, don't go in the morning. Your feet will change throughout the day. So making sure that you take out the inner sole, and our members have access to all of this in the resources. Take out that inner sole, put your foot on it, make sure you've got that thumb width in between because it really does make a difference. And we were talking about this with our Become an Active Hiker group on the weekend, when you go downhill, your foot pushes forward. So you want to make sure that you've got room at the end of your boot for that. And, if that keeps happening to your feet and you keep getting bruised toes or toenails at the end of the day, then go onto YouTube and find the 50 million ways that you can to tie your shoelaces so that that doesn't happen, or find that heel stomping technique to bring your heel back to the back of your boot. And width is something that we talk about all the time and we hear about all the time as well with women. And Karen has just said there, I love my Ultra is perfect for my wide feet. And we're all very different. A lot of women say, I can only buy men's shoes. And so automatically we've got this preset thing of what our feet are like. And it may be that, you bought men's shoes once because that's all they had there. Hiking gear and hiking for women, equipment for women is changing all the time. So popping back into that store each and every time, those shoes that Karen just mentioned probably weren't around in the style that they are now, weren't around 2 or 3 years ago when you bought your pair before. So, and think about, if your feet are wide, is it both feet that are wide, or is it just one foot that is wide? Is it a bunion? Is it a some other, thing that's happening to your foot that's causing that? And what happens if you get it wide on one side and the other foot is not particularly wide? So, all of those things are really important. And I truly believe that you need to understand your feet before you go into the store and tell a random stranger that this is what you what you're looking for, because they will ask the same questions they ask every other person. And whilst they're qualified, you spend that 5, 6, 7 minutes trying on a pair of shoes. Well, more time spent trying on the shoes, but that's all they spend with you to really get, you know, sorry, that's the length of time it takes for them to ask the questions that they think will get you the right shoe for all your hiking. So you really have to know your feet. You really have to know your trails, what you're going to be using them for, where you want to go, what feel around the foot, whether you want high or whether you want low rise as well. And, matching we can spend a lot on our boots, which is, important to, um, well, it's not important to spend a lot of money. It's important to get the right fit and then be prepared to pay the amount of money that is required for the right fit. And that will vary depending where you go, depending on the brands, and depending on you, in terms of what money means. But socks need to go with it as well. And someone said to me the other day, why would you pay $30 or more for a pair of hiking socks? Let me tell you, hiking socks are worth their weight in gold in protecting our feet. They're worth their weight in gold in the compression that goes around it. They're worth their weight in gold in blister prevention and blister management as well. So you don't need a whole lot of pairs of hiking socks. You just need to get the right hiking socks. And if you think of it like a little ecosystem, your foot that you are taking care of, you're probably not stomping around the house in your bare feet, getting heel cracks and stuff like that. You're probably should be managing it in some way that your feet are the first line of defense, then the sock, and then the boot that goes, or shoe that goes with them. And the question I often get asked is, how do I know when to replace my boots? And this comes back to our feet as well. If you are suddenly feeling, so if we, as I said before, if you walk around the store with the shoes on and they feel great in the store and they let you take them home and you can walk around the house for a week or so with your shoes on and they feel really great in the house, then you'll go out on the trail and you might have a 2-hour hike planned. And in that 2 hours, the shoes feel really good. Then you go on a much longer hike, 5 or 6, and all of a sudden the shoes don't feel, or the boots, how they should. So that's when it really starts to show up. So you'll know pretty much automatically whether it feels wrong. Like if it's just totally the wrong feet, you'll know wrong fit, you'll know that straight away. But the longer you're on your feet, the more you're going to feel it, longer in your shoes. So the question then becomes, how do I know when to replace them? If you're out on the trail and you can feel the ground beneath you, you can feel every rock coming up through your boot or your shoe, then you know it's time to replace them. If you are on the trail and you feel that you're not gripping going downhill, then it is time to replace them. Or you don't feel confident that they're gripping. If you're on the trail and your sole is flapping, there's bits coming off, then it's time to replace them. If you're on the trail and your feet are soaking wet through the shoe and the shoe takes a long, long time to dry, as mine currently are, then you probably need to either re-waterproof them or replace them. If you are suddenly starting to hurt more on hikes than what you were before, so your knees or your hips or things that start to show up that weren't showing up before, then you probably need new shoes or boots, or it's time to revisit them. And the rough guide, it's the same for running and same for our shoes that we wear around the suburbs. And this can have a direct link on our hiking boots or shoes and on our feet and how our feet feel, is that all shoes need to be replaced at certain periods of time. And so for sports shoes, including hiking shoes, it's roughly 600 to 800 kilometers. Now, for some of you who train weekly and you're doing, 10, maybe a bit more every week, That's 520 kilometers a year if you're doing 10 kilometers a week, 52 weeks of a year. So you're literally looking at buying a new pair every year. If you're doing more than that, if you're training a couple of times a week or you're going on multi-day adventures, you're probably coming back to about 9 months every year, or every 9 months, that you need to consider whether you buy a new pair of boots or not. That's on the upper end. So have a think about that, and all those elements of what does your shoe look like, how's it performing, as well as your time. And you can track that. I think in the sports watches you can actually add your gear in. I know you can with running shoes. You can add your gear in, so it just tracks when you put your shoes in and what brand, so that and then it will accumulate and tell you when you're just about to think about buying a new pair. And the breaking in of the shoes, when we were at school, do you remember that? And we all got those leather shoes for school. And day one had to be shiny, but you had to wear them in at home because your feet would hurt and blister for the first few days. It's not so much that anymore, because the shoes are more pliable than they used to be, the hiking shoes or boots, and they're softened as well now. They're not like they used to be. The technology for gear comes around pretty quickly. But what the wearing in is getting your foot and your shoe to feel comfortable together. That's what the wearing in is. So that's why we always say, don't try something new on your multi-day hike. Try it always in the training. But getting the shoe and the boot to mold together to feel really comfortable, like it's an old friend, does take a good couple of decent day hikes to really feel that these are the right ones for you. So Karen has said she loves her Ultras. Meg has La Sportivas. I have those as well. I've got to go find some more now. Ellen has Lower. So, there's lots of different brands for all of us. And Alison has Merrells, which are Gore-Tex. Most, you have to ask for non-Gore-Tex these days. And, as I've always said, never buy anything on full price, but you need to know some things. Sometimes you just can't avoid doing that. So if you think about being on a multi-day adventure, so a day hike, if something goes wrong with our feet, if our feet start to hurt, if our legs start to ache, and there's something going wrong with that little ecosystem of the threesome there of our feet, our socks, and our shoes or boots. And Ellen has said, for my feet, my socks are almost as important as my boots. Your feet are your transport, not only on a hike, but in everyday life as well. So if you're on a multi-day hike, and I've seen this happen, and it's day 2 of 5 and your feet have failed you. You have blisters because your shoes are new, or you changed something. If you haven't worn them before and haven't had the experience in them before, you can kind of have your whole hike ruined because you're so worried about your feet and it hurts so much. And there's only so much of managing the damage that you can do, and only so many painkillers you can have before the opportunity cost of continuing, it's just not worth continuing. So we recommend that everyone tests gear before they go. Test your feet, but if your feet are hurting before you're even on the trail, think about, we often say when accidents happen, it's not the thing that happened just before, it's the 3 or 4 decisions that you made before. So if you're feeling hot spots, you stop and you address those hot spots straight away. If you're feeling like you're not lifting your feet, check, is it your are your boots the right size? Are your muscles hurting because they're not used to lifting, boots of that weight, or lifting up on stairs and things like that. So, it's not just as simple, although it should be simple, as putting, socks on and boots on over the top. From what I see, the women who are successful on multi-day hikes, and I've hiked with hundreds and hundreds of women all over the world, is the ones who know their feet. Their boots are well worn but not worn out. Their socks are not brand new, but they're new enough that they still have the compression. They still have the the elasticity. They're not worn thin, because that can also then start to impact and rub very differently in our shoes as well. They're not thinking about their feet at all on the trail. Yes, it's nice to get off your feet at the end of the day, but they're actually thinking about, the conversation. They're thinking about the views. They're thinking about the experience that they're having as well, and the experience that they came for. So while I'm here, Leonie says that she wears Merrells as well and never had a blister and likes wearing 2 pairs of socks for comforting and cushioning. So yeah, and that's an individual choice, which is why we really encourage you to think about your feet as the non-negotiables in this whole thing. Probably the number one piece of equipment in your whole hiking kit is your feet, and then number 2 would be the shoes or the boots, and the socks, equal partners there, that go on those as well. So your boots are the one thing that connects you to every single centimeter on the trail. Every single centimeter. You cannot go from A to B on the trail without having boots on your feet. So important to really get that relationship right between your foot, your sock, and your boot, so that we ensure that happy feet make for happy hikers. So that is it from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you have a foot conversation, and thank you everyone who has contributed, if you have a conversation, whether that's a learned experience, whether that is some comments you want to share, or something that you wish you had known when you first started out or were looking for your next pair of boots because your current ones weren't serving you, then I encourage you to drop that below. So thank you for joining me, and I'll catch up with you next week. See you then. Bye.